Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, President and Founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. So without any further ado, let's get started. It's Friday. You made it through another amazing week. That's because you're awesome, and that's because everything you do makes a difference. And as usual today, we're going to cover our agile, not so agile topic of the week, and it's going to be something uplifting and motivational. And those of you who know me know pretty well that I like to talk about challenges quite a bit, and I like to talk about when we have an obstacle in our path, that sometimes we treat it like it's the worst thing in the world, right? When in actuality, obstacles are opportunities for us to grow in most cases. So I thought it'd be a good idea for me to share a story that I once heard that helped me understand this and helped me see things from a little bit different perspective. So this story involves a few different characters, and I guess my first challenge for you is to figure out which character you are, and then to figure out, what the whole logic is behind, or what the whole meaning, of course, behind the story is, because that's how most of these little parabolic stories go. So here we go. So once there was a wealthy king. This guy was like insanely rich, and he had a huge kingdom, but they had one main path that led from his kingdom to a neighboring kingdom that was even larger kingdom. And this path was, used quite frequently, and it was just a frequently traveled road. So the king had an idea. He said, I want to see who in my kingdom is most loyal to me, the king. So he said, well, I'm going to have a huge boulder placed right smack in the middle of the road. So, groups of people came and his loyal followers, and they helped him place a boulder in the center of the road. Well, now that the boulder was in place, it was just a matter of him having his most loyal servant sit and observe to see what would happen. So the first people to pass were some of the king's wealthiest merchants and couriers who were trying to travel to and from the two different neighboring cities. And he thought for certain, he says, yep. He says, these are the people. He says, they'll pay to have their rock removed. He says, I know exactly how this is going to end. He says, it's going to end, make me very happy. But rather than moving the boulder out of the way, they went and walked around it. It was a little bit of a task. They went off the road and walked around it. And many of them even loudly blamed the king for not maintaining the roads properly. But not one of them tried at all to move the boulder, which is really interesting. So then the next group came along, and they were the king's mightiest soldiers. And he thought to himself, he says, if anybody's going to move this rock, these are the guys. They're so strong, they should be able to easily get this boulder off the road, he says, and that'll show their loyalty to the king. The soldiers came up. The soldiers saw the rock, joked about how the rock was blocking everyone's path, didn't try to move it, and said, the king is just a jerk, and I can't believe he let this happen. And many of them also cursed the king, which didn't make a lot of sense, but they did, and they walked away. It wasn't until later in the afternoon when a simple peasant from a third village away was making his way through, trying to get to the town, and his arms were full of vegetables and gear to set up his little shop at the market there. And his arms were completely full. And he got to this point in the road where the boulder was, and you could see he took a deep breath. And you could tell that this peasant didn't have much. He didn't have much of anything, and that he had to arrive early enough into the village to sell his vegetables, or else his whole day would have been wasted. And this boulder was there in the path, and you could tell that it upset him. So he stopped, and he put down all of his vegetables. And he sat and looked around for a moment, and he moved all the way over clear to the other side of the road, and he found a very, very large stick that had been broken off from a tree. And he went and got the stick, and using the stick as a lever, he tried to move the rock and noticed that it was hard to move. So then he went and got a boulder, a smaller boulder, and he placed the boulder there to create a lever. And he got the lever going, and he put the stick under, and it still wasn't enough. So then he tried to recruit the help of a nearby soldier to ask him to help him move a larger stone so he could help move the boulder out of the road, when he was told he's wasting his time, that there was no way he was going to move that boulder. That boulder was way larger, and that the king would have to pay someone to have it moved. But he insisted. He says, the boulder is in the way. He says, not only I, but no one else can get through conveniently. He says, I'm going to get this boulder out of the way. And finally, he went and found a larger stick. And he put the larger stick wedged underneath the smaller stick, wedged with the smaller boulder with the larger boulder. And he finally got a lever big enough that he could get the boulder to move. And the second he got it moving, he leaned with all of his weight against it and rolled the boulder over. He was thrilled and excited to see that he finally got the boulder off the road, only to discover that the boulder had crushed the vegetables that he was bringing to the market. At this point, he was visibly and physically upset, as well as sick to his stomach because he didn't know how he was going to pay his family. But he said in his heart of hearts that he still did a good thing. And he used the larger stick to get some dirt and fill in the divot from where the boulder was. And when he went to stir the dirt, he noticed that there was something there, a small bag, and he picked up the bag. And inside the bag was a note for the king. And the note from the king said, thank you for doing the job that no one wanted to do. And the purse was full of some coins, some gold coins. And the gold coins equated to more than this peasant would ever make in 3 years in the vegetable market. And as he sat and wept, he decided to do what was right and went to the king and tried to return the gold coins to the king, explaining that what he did was a civic duty and that it didn't require a reward. When the king turned to him and smiled and said, the greater reward is in you. He said, what you learned today is that every obstacle is not just an obstacle, but it presents an opportunity for us to improve our condition. Sorry if I got a little emotional, but this story means a lot to me because I can tell you that I've seen obstacles in my path. I can tell you that I've been to obstacles in others' path. I can tell you that I've met lots of people in my life who walked around a stone that was stopping me. And I've seen lots of people who didn't care and who cursed me for letting the stone be there. But then I discovered the love of my life, my beautiful wife. And she was willing to look upon me with every deficiency I had and help uplift me and move the obstacles out of my way so that we could grow together and be successful. I think it's important for you to discover who the rock is. I think it's important for you to discover how to move the boulder. I think it's important for you to discover who the peasant is, who's the person that's going to do everything they can to uplift you and remove the obstacles that are in your way. I think it's critical that you not worry so much about the vegetables from time to time. Worry about the big picture. Take a step back. And what I can promise you is that if you do these things, that you're going to quickly realize that the people you need to surround yourself with are the people who would take the time to remove the boulder, not the people who would take the time to swear at you for having the boulder there in the first place. I hope that uplifting story was a little bit good for you. And I'm sorry if I got emotional between that and allergies. Things are just not running good for me today. But I hope it helped you learn a valuable lesson. I hope that it brought you some peace or solace in your heart. And as always, I encourage you to tune in next week. We've got more Agile topics, and we'd love to have you be a part of the Daily Stand-Up Podcast. If you have a topic you'd like for us to cover, send it over to learnmore@agiledad.com. Thank you. Have an amazing weekend. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.